Well, joining us for a deep dive on local stories you may not have heard about are two reporters covering Brooklyn from the online news site DNAInfo New York. Returning to our BK Live studio is Rachel Holliday Smith. Thanks for being here.
Welcome back.
And we also want to welcome back Gwynne Hogan.
Thanks so much for having us.
So a lot of things have been going on, ladies. In writing, we always look for DNAInfo for nice, juicy things that are going on in Brooklyn, at least I do. So, Gwynne, can you tell us about the Loft Law? I understand that there is an artist who may be losing their studio after 20-plus years due to the Loft Law loophole. And there's also pending legislation with the Loft Law coming up in June that people may need to know about?
Right. Loft Law coverage expanded to include areas in North Brooklyn, which, as many people know, is sort of like full of artists and people that were transforming old warehouses. So in 2010, there were some new changes to the law that allowed this area to be included under coverage, where tenants would get like rent stabilization status and not be able to be evicted by landlords. But so that deadline is approaching on June 15th. And so there's sort of a scramble in North Brooklyn to apply for coverage if you haven't, because as you know, the area is developing really quickly, and this is sort of the last chance to save these artist spaces. And these two artists that I wrote about, Shige Amoriya and Jimena Garnica, they've been in, well, Shige's been there for 20 years. He sort of transformed the space himself. He fixed it up. If there was a leak, he would fix it. And they have this weird situation where originally it was a garage door on the front of the space, but when they were trying to apply for coverage, the changes to the law required that there be windows on an exterior wall. So they built a wall behind the garage door with windows in it, which technically doesn't count. It doesn't. I know, there are windows on the sidewalk, but because of that, they may not get coverage and they may be evicted eventually. And that is going to come up later this month, whether or not they'll get protection under that law.
So other people in the building did get the Loft Law coverage, but they've
tenants.
and they've been there 20 years.
That's like the okie doke. Yeah, these are like salt of the earth, sort of the artists that you would want to live next door to.
That you've been living next door to for 2
But who
decades.
you would want, they have a whole street festival that they do and all this jazz,
So,
or they give back to the community.
Yeah.
Well,
See what happens.
from that incident to someone who may be fighting now for affordable housing, the Bedford Union Armory has continued to make a lot of headlines. We've been paying attention a few weeks ago, or last week even, when Lori Cumbo gave her State of the District address, and there were people actively protesting outside as she was sort of evolving on her views about the affordability there. So where are we now?
Right now, the official ULURP process started to change the zoning laws to actually allow this to happen. So that's moving forward despite the fact that Lori Cumbo changed her view. She actually is saying that she's not going to support this. She's not. But I will say that there are definitely people who do not trust her on that. A lot of union folks, New York Communities for Change, some tenant union folks from Crown Heights, they're really holding her to that, and they don't trust that she actually will vote no. That vote actually happens for the Bedford Union Armory after this ULURP process, which could take months, but it officially started last week, and it's going to start at the community board level. They have to approve the project. So the city's going forward with it, but there's no support from the city councilwoman.
And there's a wall of electeds on the other side, though, from Congress all the way to the state capitol,
to the borough
too.
president, yeah. Absolutely.
You mean who are saying no?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as condominiums are part of the equation, they're saying no.
Yes, that's right. And for folks who don't know, there are, I think, 56 luxury condominiums that will actually be built on the south side of that giant military building on Bedford Avenue that will be sold permanently to the developers. So they will be gone from city property, and that's what people are so upset about. Yeah.
And how much of this is just sort of an election year issue?
Well, I couldn't say, but the timing is interesting. There's been a lot of pressure on Lori Cumbo from her challenger, her main challenger on her left at this point, Edie Fox, who is running for her seat. She ran against her last time, too. And she's been really, really vocal about this. She actually had her announcement for her run outside the Bedford Union Armory with all these union folks who are against it. So that was a really strong image.
Nice prop and That's a
Again,
powerful image.
That's,
Yeah,
gonna be a
that's taking a stand.
race to watch. It was like the most crowded race last time
yeah,
when
it was close,
Tish
right?
vacated for the citywide office.
All right, going back to Gwynne. So Williamsburg Park. You know, everybody when you're driving across the Williamsburg Bridge and you see the Domino Sugar thing.
Yeah.
Okay, what is going on with this
Right.
campus?
We got a new rendering.
Yeah, new images keep coming out. The developer really wants to keep this development fresh in everybody's minds. There's one building that's nearing completion, which you can see in that image. It's sort of shaped like a square with a hollow area in the middle. That's a building that has partially affordable units. That housing lottery already opened up with like 87,000 applicants for just 104
for
units.
like the $800 studios.
Exactly.
They
Yeah,
need
if
to
you
fill in
get
that gap then and get some more.
Yeah.
Screw your architecture. We need more parks to fill in that hole.
And as a part of the project, there's also this 8-acre, I believe it's 8-acre park, waterfront park with a waterfront
the access
esplanade.
to-
Yeah. And it's being designed by the lead architects of the High Line, and part of it will include this thing they're calling an artifact walk, which we don't really know too much about yet, but it's a lot of pieces of the original Domino building that are going to be recycled and repurposed, and sort of like big cranes and original
Carol Walker
elevators.
involved
And
at all?
That'd be great.
Right?
yeah, it could be cool, and it'll be interesting to see sort of as images come out what it's actually going to look like.
Well, one of the headaches that people might have to contend with, I guess that building won't be online before we get this L train shut down. But there's been a lot of talk about the buses. that
Yes,
come
because when you
in.
live in that neighborhood and the L
Yes.
train's going to shut down for 15 months,
Yeah.
and then they're going to use shuttles. How many shuttles are they going to have?
Well, there's
and then if you
diesel-powered
have
buses, yeah.
diesel, what's going on with that? So.
That's this is the alternative service plans are still being hammered out, and they're doing that largely behind closed doors. Although there are a series of public meetings coming up in the next couple months. But what we sort of know now from a recent meeting with lawmakers and the MTA is that they're tentatively planning 3 new bus routes from Brooklyn into Manhattan, 2 from the Grand Street L stop over the bridge, 1 to Delancey and 1 that goes up to Union Square, and then a 3rd from the Bedford Avenue stop to Delancey.
Is there a lot of
and that's
political,
a lot
I
of
guess,
buses, yeah.
support behind this? Because originally it was just only Raphael Espinal that was just sort of coming out and saying, well, hey, what about
Steve
these
Levin.
buses?
And Steve Levin,
And now
yeah.
there's more people sort of chiming in saying, hey,
They had this press conference at the Bedford Avenue L stop, like, we need electric buses, and 4 days later the MTA approved a sort of an update to a contract where they would buy 200 more diesel buses. And so people were like, what? Like, we had this.
Well, the
are they still
goofy part-
researching the diesel
The
buses?
thing
though? I mean,
is, the goofy
electric
part
buses?
is the MTA president who's saying, well, this is sort of, it's untested. We need more.
Exactly.
But
We need
wouldn't
to
this
know how
be the best test
our
ever?
roads are the worst, so we need to see how these buses will.
Right.
You're right.
But
this
it
is the
seems
best
like this
test
would be the
ever.
best test ever because it's a set route and
There
it
you go.
was be in action. This seems like the testing ground.
It seems like there is still some wiggle room because after that happened, they then bought a bunch more in their capital budget. They approved a purchase of a lot more electric buses.
Yeah.
So it seems like, and the diesel buses that they bought, they haven't exactly identified that they're going to be there for the L train. So I think there's still chance for there to switch around.
Well, this
which
is a
buses are
fun
gonna be
fact.
used.
On my bike into work today, I was behind one of these electric buses on Southwest coming out in Prospect Park, and it's all wrapped, and it shows that, oh, you have Wi-Fi on this bus, and a USB. I wasn't on the bus, but this is like the outside wrap was advertising all these great advancements that come. I didn't get a face full of anything from it, so maybe it's the bus of the
It smelled
future.
okay.
Yeah, well, speaking of, it was next to Prospect Park, so there might be some good crossover there, but there's an area of Prospect Park that's set to be revitalized.
Oh yeah, that's an exciting project. So it's called the Rose Garden, although there are no roses there.
Okay, because I was like,
Yeah,
where's the rose
there's no
garden?
roses, I asked.
Okay, thank you.
But it's this area near the Vale of Cashmere, which is this amazing, right? It's
I've
this
never
beautiful
been there. It just sounds awesome. The Vale of Cashmere.
Right, very
in Prospect
Victorian.
Park?
Yeah, it sounds hot.
It is, and it's this area that has this pool and these beautiful trees. It's very nicely manicured now. They've spruced it up a bit, but
Yeah.
right to its east, there's this area where there's just these big concrete circles.
Like crop circles.
Yeah, it's
like
very
concrete
strange, and it's
things.
not really, doesn't really look like much, but they're going to renovate it over the course of several years, but they're taking input. There's a meeting coming up where they want people
crowdsourcing
they are
us.
crowdsourcing ideas for this.
Yeah.
Technology.
And right now it's basically used by birders, and actually they told me people who are looking for a
birder.
spot to cruise, which is
In
sort of
nature,
interesting.
getting all natural.
Yep.
Maybe
and-
that should just be the purpose. We're all grown ups here.
But they're actually going to do a beautiful, this summer people can look forward to this beautiful pinwheel art installation. It's going to be 7,000 pinwheels that are made from people's connection to Prospect Park. You can submit a photo or a memory of Prospect Park, and they're going to be on little pinwheels
there's
all over.
little-
Yeah, you're gonna have the memory of smooching in the park.
Yeah,
It's
getting
like
it
the
on.
gates, but lower.
Yes,
And
exactly.
pinwheels.
There you go.
But
Brooklyn's
it's a
own.
pretty cool project.
Well, speaking of another cool project, can you tell us a little bit about the renovation of a historic theater
Yeah,
that
that's a really
apparently
big
is right down
Steps
the
away from
street?
here. Yeah.
I didn't
I
know
didn't
about it. I
know.
live really close by, and I actually didn't know about this one, but it's the Paramount Theater, which is from the 1920s. I think it was built in
Wonder
1928.
Theaters. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just sounds like the Paramount Theater.
Yeah, it's right, and it's part of LIU. They actually used it for basketball practice and nothing to do with music or
Yeah,
a
since
venue
the
or anything
60s.
like
They
that.
bought it in 62, I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's been with the university since then, but they're going to turn it into what they call a world-class venue. And it's actually being developed by the people who did Barclays. So
Very cool.
if you've been to Barclays, that's going to be sort of the caliber, they say. But it's this really beautiful, it's got a Rococo ceiling. You can see it in a photo if they put it up on the screen. And it's going to be, I think, 3,000 seats. So it's going to be another giant
be like-
venue
I mean,
in
it's
downtown
that's
Brooklyn.
talk about location. This is
Competing with the
perfect.
King's Theater. So we've got the King's
Yeah.
on Flatbush at one end, and this will be like a sister theater,
Yeah.
one of these jewel box where 3,000 folks can get in.
And it's the
instead
same
of a
era
mega-
that it was, I believe, that it was built. So yeah, exactly.
The
Similar to
resurgence
King's Theater.
of the great theater halls.
Mm-hmm.
All those that weren't lost, so thankfully somebody kept it around. They
Now,
were still-
in my neighborhood, when I'm driving down Flushing on my bike,
Tell us
I'm
about it.
always going past the Pfizer building for the last decade, and it's turned over, it's changing,
And it's
what's-
white now. I didn't even know until last week that they painted the whole thing white.
What's going on with the Pfizer building?
So the Pfizer building is city-owned on the south side of Flushing, but this story that we're looking at is actually a privately owned property on the north side that's been vacant for a very long
Forever.
time.
It's
Yeah,
just-
forever,
yeah.
since it was knocked
It's
down.
all of a sudden, it's just
And it's not just across the street. It's like two full city blocks. The public review process is now open for a huge apartment complex, around 1,400 apartments, some of which 287, which would be subsidized at different income brackets. And this sort of began last fall, where the Rabsky Group, who are the developers, they're based in Williamsburg. They were met with a lot of protests from local community groups because of historical issues in the Broadway Triangle area,
Yeah.
particularly about the city-owned land, which was rezoned under Bloomberg, and there's still a lawsuit
Yeah.
involving whether or not that was a
bad deal.
racist rezoning.
Yeah.
And so, there were a lot of protests because people were saying, how can we trust the city process here when we couldn't trust it for the land next door?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's not clear when it will go to the community board, likely this month, but the agenda hasn't been released yet. But
That whole
yeah.
Broadway Triangle is like rife. We could do an entire
season.
docu-series there
Yeah.
with all of the things at play there. And it's been ongoing for years and years, but I guess it's still not over. So many court decisions. So in our last minute, I'm going to go to you first, Rachel. Is there anything that we should be watching or anything that's on your radar that's going to bubble up to the site anytime soon?
Well-
or even a throwback that you just stuck in your brain?
Well, this isn't not a fun story necessarily, but there's a lot going on with homeless shelters in my beat in Crown Heights.
Yeah.
One officially opened after a 2-month court battle last week, actually. And
Is this one of the cluster site things?
it's
that we-
not.
Okay.
It's actually one of the new ones of the mayor's 90.
Right.
And it's, in my beat, there were 3 of the first 5. So people are pretty upset in Crown Heights about these homeless shelters. And there's a court date on Friday coming up this week to decide another 132 family shelter.
Because people have been
in
barred
Crown
from
Heights.
moving in, right? That
That's
was
the
the
one.
sort of injunction that kept more
And
families.
it's going to be decided, it's going to have another court hearing on
This
Friday.
week.
So that's what I'm watching. That's a big story
Okay.
in Brooklyn.
You want to take us home? Is there one that you're thinking of quickly?
I think we've talked about it. I mean, yeah, just this L train stuff, development. There's a lot going on, and we're gonna try to keep covering it.
Aaron
yeah.
certainly will.
Absolutely. I don't have a choice. And these things, we'll talk about these things later. It's my first
Much
time ever
later.
playing with
Much
one.
later.
Much
Yeah,
later.
I see how they could be a little.
It's the first time I played it.
Yeah, everybody, try
This
one.
is when you turn for the real news.